And why does improving performance help with weight loss?
So if we can help people move better, then naturally they're going to move more.
If you open up your rib cage, one, you'll get a whole lot more oxygen. So if you're not optimizing your thoracic region, you're not optimizing your ability to burn body fat.
So if we look at like statistically, the top 3 injuries in the human body is like back number 1, shoulder number 2, knee number 3. So I think that one of the problems in our population is that we don't move enough. We've gone into this sedentary lifestyle, this working lifestyle where you're sitting for many hours a day on a computer or whatever it is you're doing. Very rarely are you doing something very active all day long. Being pain-free is maybe not always the goal, or it may be a bad goal. It's a good idea,
Yeah.
but it's not a reality. So like the best athletes in the world, people at top performers, they're not all pain-free all the time by any means, and they push their body through pains and challenges. So you don't want to be listening to pain so much that you're scared to challenge your body and push it. There's many conditions where working through pain is the right thing. So
Okay, my scale is not moving. What number should I start focusing on? If you can give some recommendation on maybe one weightlifting metric that they can chase for, one metabolic metric they can chase for, and then one gymnastics metric they can chase for, that would potentially get them to start losing weight. What would some of those metrics be?
that's a great one. So
Are you in the process of losing weight and you've started the process? In the first month, maybe you've lost 10 pounds, maybe even 15 pounds. And then all of a sudden, it stops moving. Maybe you lose a pound and then you gain 2 pounds. And then this cycle has now lasted maybe 2 months, 3 months for you, and you feel like there's no hope. What if I told you that you're hitting a major milestone? In today's conversation, I got the owner of Kime, Tony, Milka, with me, and we are going to have a conversation of why getting stronger will get you to lose weight. So I'm pumped for you to be here. I'm excited because over the 15 years in the training business, and you've had 20 years in the physical therapy business, we've helped hundreds of clients not only get stronger, we've get them to live a little bit longer and freer, but also in the process, also get them to lose weight. So
100%.
I'm excited about that.
yeah, thanks Royce for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Okay, so I want to start this first question with a story. And guys, I promise it will make sense. We just had a conversation earlier while we were grabbing coffee, because I just recently purchased a Tesla. And it's not a brand new one, guys. It's an older one. It's like a 2013. But anyways, I bought it. And there's a lot of you guys that are huge Elon Musk fans and Tesla fans, and
It's a good vehicle. I'm
it's
a fan.
great, yeah.
I don't know one, but I'm a fan.
Yeah. So there was a super fan came up to me and was like, "Dude, are you using X, Y, and Z, like the things that you can do?
Yeah.
Are you doing auto park? Do you know the buttons can do all of these? And did you set up your settings to do this X, Y, and Z?" And dude, I was like, "No, I don't even know." He was like, "What are you doing? What are you doing then?" I just drive to work and I put it on the charger.
Right.
Yeah.
Not using hardly any of the features. Yeah.
100%.
Basics. Yeah.
Yeah. And dude, he just like kind of rolled his eyes. He rolled his eyes. And then this is what he said. He was like, "You're underutilizing Tesla's potential." And he walked away. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
Awesome.
I was heartbroken. But I share that story because I get a lot of athletes, and you probably get a lot of athletes, and they're like, "I want to lose weight." And you're like, "Cool, but we can get you to do way more than that. We can get your squat up. We can get you less knee pain. We can get your 6-minute mile time." All of those things. I feel when people hit this blockade in their weight loss journey, they're so fixated on the scale, they need to start fixating on the skills or the strength, right?
Yeah, love it. Like you said, they don't use us to our full potential, right? Certainly not you.
Yeah.
And sometimes they hit those roadblocks. And in my field as a therapist, we spend so much time trying to get speed bumps out of the way, get roadblocks out of the way. So they could hit a metabolic speed bump that you guys are going to focus on more than we do as a therapist. But when they hit those mechanical speed bumps, like they have pain or they have stiffness or their body's just hurting, sore, or they're finding difficulty doing the intensity that you want them to do.
Right.
As a coach, And that's where we really can come in and like help them facilitate that, because then it becomes a mental battle, right?
Yes.
They're like, hey, coach wants me to work harder. I'm trying to do this, but my body feels like it's not cooperating. There's something lacking. Maybe they're hitting a wall.
Yeah.
So if we can help them get over that wall and teach them something new and open their body up in a new way, we're like, oh, all right, now it's not so difficult to squat or not so difficult to lunge or do a plank or a pull up or whatever the challenge is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then they get reignited, they get excited, they can get over that hurdle. It's a great process.
Yeah, let's dive into that. And why does improving performance help with weight loss?
I think that's it. So for me, it's all about helping somebody move better. So if we can help people move better, then naturally they're going to move more. I think people stop moving because they have injuries or they have pains. And it's one of the biggest things in our field, where a lot of times we'll see people have either, illness, disease, things that come up in life that's a direct result of having an orthopedic problem, like a knee pain or a back pain that started earlier, maybe 10 years earlier, maybe 20 years earlier. Like a lot of times we'll have a guy who maybe played football in high school, blew his knee out. He never got rehabbed well, never could maybe run again, or has always avoided it or whatever. And as a result of that, they start to put on some pounds,
Exactly.
They, maybe not in the beginning, but when they hit 30, 35 and they haven't ran in 10 years, metabolism starts to change, and now they're gaining a couple pounds a year, and before you know it, they're up 20, 30 pounds, and they're like, gosh, like, how did I get here? And now how do I get rid of it? Because I can't start running now, which is the easiest go-to tool to lose weight, but I can't run because my knee, and I haven't done it in 20 years, so that's not healthy.
Yeah.
So they get frustrated. So we get a lot of folks where we're working with our training partners like yourself to say, like, all right, let's help you get there. Let's work through a fitness problem, starting to get you more active, and then I'm going to help you work through these orthopedic problems and see if we can get rid of some of the stuff that you've been lingering with for a while. Because unfortunately, it builds something small. It could be an old ankle sprain, or it could be a nasty injury, a traumatic like a knee injury or a back injury of some kind, and it just starts to nag, and then you start to develop these patterns that are dysfunctional. And then when you go to try to exercise or do something heavier, you load that pattern, and then
you break again.
Yeah. Then anything's possible. You could hurt the same body part, or you're more likely to hurt a different body part, frankly. And then people just get frustrated. They feel like, everything's falling apart. But that's not the case at all. There's a reason for it. And there's ways, to me, relatively easy ways to reset that system and get them back to moving.
To being more optimal.
Yeah.
Right? So I see a lot of athletes, and I have some right now that burn a lot of calories and they're doing really well, but I see one movement pattern. I was like, dude, you need to work on mobility here and here. And while we can do that in class, it's never the right amount of dosage to get them to completely move the way they should. And they often just do it for like a little bit and then they neglect it. Yeah. And I'm like, dude, you're missing your full potential.
Totally.
You're the Tesla right now.
Yeah, right, exactly. Mobility is it is different. It's a different dosage. To your point's perfect. You can get a great workout and get an AMRAP in, or get a really good Metcon in, or whatever it is, and hit it hard for an hour a day or less than that, and only do that every several days a week and still be successful. But with mobility, it's much more of a constant process. So I just had a guy yesterday, actually. He shattered his tibial plateau about 6 months ago. Had to put it back together with screws and plates and everything. And he's been working with another therapy group for the last 4 months, and his knee's stuck at not even 100 degrees of bend, right? So he can't squat. Yeah. And he's a super competitive cyclist, like top 5 in the country for his age group. And he got hit by a car, is how he broke his leg, right? So he's back on the bike. This is the best thing about athletes. So he's back on the bike with all these modifications. So he's not clipped in. He's got this special pedal thing he built out of wood so that he can still get a revolution.
Oh my gosh.
But the knee doesn't bend far enough to do it properly, right?
Right.
And so in talking with him, it was very simple at the end of the day, which is usually the case. He's doing all these different things, but he's doing them like once a day, or, at best maybe twice a day. Yep. But he's finding he's like pushing it hard during that time. And he's like kind of having like bite down on a bite stick and like really going through some pain. And I'm like, dude, that's not going to cause the tissue to adapt in the way that we need it for this. That's great for strength building. But for mobility, I want you to work on this every 3 hours. And let's give you something super simple, one thing you can do that we can actually make a change. And then let's just focus on doing one thing really, really well. And in the session, we gained it 15 degrees right away. And then we gave him actually gave him 2 things because he's like, dude, I can do more. I'm like, okay, but just, I want it every 3 hours. You only need to spend like 5 to 6, 7 minutes on it, but you have to do it all the time. And don't push it so hard that you're sore 3 hours later, because then you're not going to do it again, right? Because then you hate it. You hate yourself. You're like, oh, this sucks and it hurts. So you got to do it at a level where it's like, we're making change, we're stimulating the tissue, getting it to adapt. So all of that conversation, but mobility is definitely a more consistent, subtle effort.
Yeah.
Compared to like maybe cardiovascular fitness or strength training.
Yeah. If you were to prescribe something that they can do on their own, what are your frequencies? Is it like 3 times a week? Is it an everyday kind of thing? Like
on a general mobility?
Yeah, idea? Just general mobility side.
Yeah. So what I love to do is make sure their warm up is ideal. I think if your warm up is set for your normal fitness routine, whether that be 2 days a week or 5 days a week or whatever it is, if you have a good warm up, so I'm a big dynamic warm up guy, just get some body movement. But I'm really specific about what we're working on. Yeah. So like, who's the person first off? Is it a male, female? What age group are they in? And then what are we doing? Mm-hmm. So are we playing basketball? Are we just fitness, trying to get through the day and stay healthy so I can have a good squat day tomorrow or be able to do an overhead press or something? So it depends on what we're doing and what our goal is. And that being said, there's 3 real main targets for mobility across the population that we'll hit. So one is ankle movement. How well does the ankle move? Specifically, does it dorsiflex and bend? Because we need that for squatting, we need that for walking, we need that for running. You just need that for basic movement. If the ankle is stuck and not moving well, then you're going to get cascading effects up the chain. So that's
like
big.
Like what kind of chains? What kind of pain?
Everything from back pain to we see a lot of knee stuff. Like if you're not getting good dorsiflexion, what happens is you can't finish your stride. So you go to make the stride and you can't finish the stride. So then you start to rotate your leg out. So then now you have this rotated hip and rotated knee. And if you're lifting on that, or you're running on that, or you're training on that, that's going to have could have anything from interior medial knee pain to anterior knee pain to hip stuff to low back pain.
Okay.
And it could be none of those things are chronic. It could be like just suddenly like you're trying to do a movement and your ankle blocks you. So now something else has to move.
Right.
The great thing about the body is it's task oriented, right? Right. So if we say, hey, pick up this pencil off the ground, or pick this thing up, you'll find a way to do it. Yeah. Because it's a survival strategy, right? So if we want to bend over, there's a good way to bend over. There's a better way. And there's some ways that are less ideal. If you don't have the proper mobility in, say, the ankle or the hip, your body will find the mobility somewhere else, and that's where we get in trouble. Yeah. So the goal of looking at a mobility program is making sure the ankle can move well, make sure the hip can move freely, which is the biggest problem we see in this country, and then the thoracic spine, so like the rib cage area, which is another massive one, because just you're not required, once you stop playing sports in life, if you're not throwing a ball or doing something overhead with regularity, especially like one-sided rotational movements, your thoracic spine tends to get more stiff, more limited, and all that's going to do is transfer more force to the low back, which is what everybody hurts, or to the shoulder, or to the neck. So the key is those 3 areas. So when we do a dynamic warm-up, we want to make sure we get those 3 areas moving better. Yeah. And depending on the person and what their body type is and how well they're moving, we might emphasize more reps on those different body parts than normal. But if the person's doing that from a mobility standpoint, they're doing it as a part of their warm-up, they'll address most of their problems pretty regularly, pretty consistently, and I think they'll see things clean up in a few weeks. They should see constant improvement. But there's also cases where maybe something's been really stuck for years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, depending on how old they are. And if that's the case, then they might need a little more aggressive, like focused work, where it might be, at least daily, if not a couple times a day, or just a little bit longer. Like I don't think you have to spend 20, 30 minutes stretching. I wouldn't suggest that at all. Yeah. But I think you need 5-minute intervals focusing on a certain region. Yeah. Maybe twice a day or something like that.
Guys, if you don't have 10 minutes, you don't have a life. You need to be able to do that, okay? So you touched up on something, and you brought up I think in our society, you said the hip issues and the shoulder issues tend to be a staple. In your professional opinion, why do you think that's happening? Yeah.
So if we look at statistically, the top 3 injuries in the human body is like back number 1, shoulder number 2, knee number 3. Right. So 1, 2, 3. So the knee and the low back, in the middle of those two things is your hip. So things that are stiff in the body don't usually complain. They're
Yeah.
usually not the things that get hurt. So stiffness is a protective mechanism. So you might think, oh, I'm fine because I don't hurt.
Yeah.
But that makes you vulnerable in areas that move a lot. So the knee is a joint that actually has a lot of freedom and a lot of motion to it, and it can do a lot of things. When the hip gets stiff, it makes it have to do more, and it pushes it outside its comfort zone, if you will, which then makes it at risk. Same thing's true for the low back. The low back is very, very mobile, and it can do a lot of movements, some of which it's all healthy. The problem is if you do it and you take advantage of that and you overutilize it,
Yeah.
then you put it at risk. So if the hip is stiff, you end up with high risk of low back pain or higher risk of knee pain, is what we've seen in sports and in studies. And then the same thing is above that. So your rib cage,
Mm-hmm.
your rib cage, if you think about what is your ribs for, most people will tell you your ribs are for protection. But that's I think that's a false sense of what it is. If that's the case, they're not very good at it.
Yeah.
Because you could definitely penetrate between the ribs very easily.
Right.
If you fall and hurt, if anyone's broken a rib before, you know how much that hurts. And they'd say, "Oh, it protects your internal organs," and say that's not true. If that was the case, they'd be much lower, right? Because all they protect is the lungs. If that's the case, and like we said, they don't do that very well. So what they really do is they create a system where you can get better breath.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think that one of the problems in our population is that we don't move enough. We've gone into this sedentary lifestyle, this working lifestyle where you're sitting for many hours a day on a computer or whatever it is you're doing. Very rarely are you doing something very active all day long.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to lead towards not having to use the aerobic system and actually expand your rib cage and make it move. If you're more fit, if you're doing more exercise, you're getting a bit of that. But then if you go counter that with 8 to 10 hours of sitting at a computer and just being slouched or on your phone or you name it, everything we do is in that position. It just goes right back to kind of being stiffer. It naturally wants to get stiffer. So we have to, in the fitness community, we have to battle that, open that back up, use breath, use rotation, extension, do things to open that back up. And the reason it's important is that if your rib cage gets stiff, then you can't raise your arm as high as you normally would. Mm-hmm. It also makes it more difficult for you to rotate. So then when you do have to rotate, you're going to do it at your low back. And then, of course, your low back is going to be the thing that complains. And then there you go with.
And then you're out for 6 weeks and you're eating Cheetos, watching
then
Netflix.
You're shutting it down. Exactly. Yeah. Then you find yourself in this bad pattern of all right, now I've hurt myself and I can't push it as hard and super frustrating. Mm-hmm. So a little bit of work preventatively to make sure that these areas are moving, like the hips and the thoracic spine and the ankle, is so valuable because it doesn't eliminate, but it reduces risk significantly.
Yes.
So
I love this.
Yeah.
So the training side of me, guys, if you open up your rib cage, one, you'll get a whole lot more oxygen.
Yeah.
And if you do studies on oxygen, this is what's causing a lot of the body fat for a lot of athletes. So if you're not optimizing your thoracic region, you're not optimizing your ability to burn body fat. So that's number one. Number two, if you're doing any type of shoulder work, you can't put anything significant overhead. I mean, you can, but it's gonna cause some damage on your lower back for sure. So by just addressing some of these corrective work, it seems backwards. We're doing corrective, but we're using corrective to improve your performance.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, when you're improving your performance, you're burning more energy, and that more energy requires more muscle. And when your metabolism is at its peak, you will start to lose more weight because just theoretically, you're just burning more calories.
Yeah, you're able to work it out. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I want to touch upon this because we talk about you've dealt with a lot of athletes. You have 70% of them that are the general population, but you've also dealt with some of the most elite athletes, 30%.
Right.
And and we'll touch upon why this question is going to be important is, the top of the athletes, how many of them fixate about the weight on the scale? And if they're not fixated on the scale, what are they obsessed about?
Yeah. So I'd say 0 of them fixate about weight on the scale. Unless there's only a few positions in sports where the weight is really important. So football is a big one, obviously, but that's usually because you're moving people. Mm-hmm. So if you play football in certain positions, moving other human bodies besides your own is what you get paid to do and what the goal of the sport is. Wrestling is the same way. So if you're engaged in moving another person, then your own body weight is very important because it creates leverage and force, and you have to be able to use that. And then, of course, we see it in like the running community, especially the distance community, but probably wrongfully so there, because if they're good at the sport, they're most likely not taking in enough calories. So we see the eating disorders on the other end of the spectrum of not eating enough there. With football, we're usually trying to drive more food down somebody to try to get them enough calories to gain weight to be more effective. So those are the two times we'll see it. But for the most part, the obsession has nothing to do with body weight. Although they're all interested in their own physique for their own ego and their own like mental confidence, I think that's certainly a big deal. But that comes secondary. Like you don't see. If I say this to people all the time, like, how should I train? Should I do more sprinting? Should I do more running? Should I do more weightlifting? And I encourage people. I'm like, well, look at your body type and like who you are, or like look at the athletes in the world and ask yourself what you want to look like.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen an overweight sprinter? Like,
no,
probably not.
Really,
these guys who run the 100 and 200 meters are jacked. They're really, really muscular people, big legs, strong glutes, obviously, and then they're ripped, but they're really more built, right? And then as the distance goes up, where you see someone running like a 1 to 2 miles, and then eventually running 5 miles,
too,
the body type changes where there's much less muscle mass, and they're much leaner, but they're very, very effective. Their aerobic system is off the charts. So they have different strengths that they bring to the table. And we have to respect that there's certain body types that fit better into those molds. And you should pick something, in my opinion, that fits more of who you are. You'll have a lot more success. So that's just an example in running. But you could think about that in anything. If you're, looking at, if you're, a long, lean person and looking at basketball, like what do those athletes look like? And who do you want your body to look like? And then from there, I think you can set up a strategy to accomplish that.
Yes.
But yeah, these athletes don't get caught up in like, how much
do I weigh today?
Do I weigh today? By no means. Like the daily scale is irrelevant unless we're trying to like, we have a very specific goal. Like so in the NFL, for example, they have very clear goals about when you show up to camp, you have to weigh this much or below. Different guys are different things. Some guys above the line, some guys below the line. Right. But that depends on their position. So like defensive linemen are really commonly you have to be below this weight, and then offensive linemen you have to be above this weight because that's what they're looking to. That's the strengths of that sport. So they're looking to make sure you worked in the off season and you're where you want you to be. And then like we've got a quarterback we train right now that's in the league, and it's really important for him to kind of break into like above 210 pounds. It was very, very important like during his first draft period because they're just looking at stats, right? Like, hey, are you over 6 foot? Do you weigh over 205? Are you fragile? The question is, are you fragile, right? Yeah. So, you want to look less fragile. Yeah. And then once you prove yourself in the league, then it's less of an issue. But in football, for example, the question is basically, what's your fragility? Yeah, you're an investment. Right? It's not so much like, hey, do you weigh 205 or 210 or, they don't really care. It's more like, all right, if you're over 210, you're probably going to be more stable. And if you get hit, you're not going to get killed, But yeah, that's not a daily the conversation's about how do I run faster? How do I jump higher? How do I stay healthy? So the key to success in sports, more than anything, is consistent health. So I trained a girl for 10 years. We went from 2006, 2016, and she was a discus thrower. So she's about 6'4". She weighed about 215 pounds when we started. She was ranked 35th in the world, but she was coming off a tibial stress fracture. So she had hurt her shin. So we started with the rehab process with that and got her healthy, and then started to improve her balance, coordination, working on all these things. And her coach is like, you can now get into positions you haven't been able to get into in many years. Yeah. So he's like, I think your performance is going to skyrocket as we start to compete with this new body and as you're using your body more effectively now, which I think is what we were just talking about. Like, if you can move better, you can now train harder and get more out of the system. Right. And then so we did that. She went to number 1 in the world within the next year. We ended up winning Olympic gold medal in 2008, and the discus was the first American in like 63 years to win it. And the key to our continued success over the next decade is that we never missed a practice or never missed a competition due to injury. And so she was really diligent about working on the things that would put her at risk and at the same time push her body very, very hard. and then, had consistent success. We worked a lot on the mental game, was what became basically the only variable after a while, because mechanically and physically we had all of those things taken care of. So then it came down to the mental game, which was good for her, that she started to have fun approaching that in the tail end of her career. But
did she maintain her weight, 216, or did it change a little bit?
So in this case, as a female, in this age group, like 25 to 30 years old, she was interested in weighing less, but she's 6'4", so she's fairly large, like frame. But she was very feminine looking. She wasn't heavy or anything. She looked like a basketball player. So,
right.
But she wanted to be a little bit less. Ideally, we ended up going to the Olympics at about 207, 208.
So a little bit lighter.
Yeah, but the fluctuation our entire time together was somewhere between 206, 207, and 220. And most of the time, she very rarely crested 215, and she was at her best. Because the discus is a sport where you have to spin, so you're rotating, and you need a lot of balance. So her being leaner was a benefit, because it helped her balance and control, and she just felt like sharper. It helped her mentality more than anything. So she did perform at her best, about 207, 208 typically.
I love how you just touched up on that. I think a lot of times, largely, the obsession will dictate how the scale moves or not. For the Gen Pop that's focusing on primarily the scale, it makes it very difficult for them to hit that next milestone, which is the whole concept of what we're talking about. And when you start shifting to a performance athlete, they rarely think about the scale. So what makes you consider is like, what do they think about? They think about their performance. So as part of a trainer, for me to, and normally I have like a percentage chart.
Sure.
For women, it's like, once they're about to hit under 20%, I got to start shifting their focus. Right. And then for men, once they start hitting like 15 or so, like, okay, we mastered the scale. Let's start mastering your skills. And it's really important to start having these trajectories. And sometimes it's things they never thought they could do.
Right.
And it could be as simple as a 5K run. It could be a half marathon. It could be their first competition for Olympic lifting. It can be a Tough Mudder, whatever that is, right? So we're like, okay, what are we going to train for performance-wise that you think you've never done before? And then when I shift it towards something that's more that requires physical performance and difficulty, it really shifts. It really starts to shift, and the weight just starts to move again.
Love it. Yeah, 100%.
Right.
I think you have to. I think you have multiple goals, right? And if weight loss might be a goal for you as the coach, or it might be the person's goal, right? Either way, or both is fine. And the scale is one way to measure that, but there's other variables, as you know, right? So I'm sure you have a variety of things, from arthrometric measurements, skin folds and size of girth measurements and stuff. They're all kind of around body type. But then you get into performance metrics. Like maybe it's a strength goal for them that's viable. Like I want to be able to lift a certain amount of weight over my head, or get it, do a deadlift and get it off the ground or whatever, or I want to run a certain distance in a certain amount of time. And those types of goals are super attainable, and they're kind of, you can make them, like 2-3 months down the road, or you can make them 1 to 2 years down the road, and give people something to work towards. And I think from a mindset standpoint, that's everything. I mean, if you're not working towards that, weight loss can be super frustrating to just watch a scale like bounce, because you can flex it so much, and there's so many reasons why it might move up or down a pound or two. But if you look at a big picture, like, all right, hey, I could run a mile in 9 minutes when I started, and now I can run it in 7.5. That's
the body's going to be drastically different from 9 minutes to 7. That's 2 minutes. And if you go from 9 minutes to 6 minutes, I guarantee your body will not look the same.
Yeah, you're not going to have a weight loss problem at that point.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I loved how you touch up on that. So really quick, this is more of a personal question, but because I've seen so many physical therapists, and it's refreshing because you're very holistic in your work. But I've also been parts of clinics where I'll see someone that's like 450 pounds or 300 pounds. And they're doing physical therapy on the shoulder for hours. and what breaks my heart is like, that's all they will prescribe. And I'm like, when do you balance? It's like, hey, dude, you need to lose weight, and you also need to do this. Like, what comes first, like, for you?
That's such a good question. So as we've grown as an organization, and the people that are attracted to Kime and to our therapists tend to be a bit more motivated now than how I started my career. Although I've always had the same passion and the same thing, but who we ended up attracting or how the business has evolved and such is interesting. But I actually was really frustrated for the first several years of my career where the patients were not people that I'd earned. They were just whoever was sent to the clinic or general population of people. And a lot of them were they weren't disabled, but they were very unable to do the basic movement. Like I spent a decent amount, to answer your question, of each session, be like, let's just get you to go for a walk for 10 or 20 minutes. Let's get outside and get a little vitamin D. Like, let's make sure we're getting a little sleep at night, like just some of the very, very basic lifestyle things. Because that's, if you're not out doing basic movements, just walking, riding the bike, getting a little aerobic conditioning in, your blood is not going to be very good. And then your healing rate is therefore going to be compromised significantly. So better blood, better healing, that's 100% correlated. So we got to give people a little bit of activity. So I spent a lot of my first years like convincing people, okay, yeah, we got the shoulder problem. We're going to do these things to get the shoulder moving in the right direction. But can we get on the bike, or can we go for a walk? Can we just get moving a little bit? And that was great. It's super rewarding at the same time to show people like, hey, it matters. Like what you do to your body and how you move it, and whether you move it or not matters. I'm a big fan of, I think you can change, every day. I say this to folks that every day I think you either get better or you get worse. And that's an active choice. If you chose to sit all day, then your body is going to adapt to that stimulus, and it's going to start to become better at sitting.
Right.
And if you sit for 2 weeks straight, 2 years straight, it's going to make adaptations that are more focused around like, all right, if I just have to sit all day, the metabolism will change, your strength will change, your tissue tension will change. But if you said, hey, I'm going to start running, 5 days a week, or I'm going to start exercising and lifting weights 3 or 4 days a week, or I'm going to do whatever it is, play this sport, your body will start to adapt to that stimulus. So we have to understand as people that you get control of what you want it to become. And that's about choosing what you want the stimulus to be. Yeah. So if you're choosing not to exercise, don't think you're like just not exercising. You're actually stimulating your body in a way that you're going to cause adaptation in a way that you're just thinking, I'm not doing anything. Well, then your body's going to adapt to that type of lifestyle, and it will change. Muscle is very, very expensive, as we know, which is why it's so valuable in weight loss, because it burns calories and it ramps up metabolism. So for your brain, your brain thinks that the muscle is very, very expensive. Right. So it doesn't want to keep it. So if you don't use the muscle, if you don't demand it to be there, it will get rid of it very, very quickly. We see this. The studies here are amazing. And you look at like the space is the biggest problem we have with space is that there's no gravity. The second an astronaut goes up or someone goes up to space and they go anti-gravity for 2 or 3 days, they can lose up to 50% muscle mass in 3 days.
I know, that's insane.
It's insane. So if you think about that, like that tells you how fast the body adapts to load and stress. So if you're laid down for a couple of days and you're not active and you're not moving, like you're starting to lose quickly. Versus if you go out and stimulate the system, you can start to build quickly.
Hey guys, we are finally accepting students in our Weight Loss Academy. In this program, we are teaching you the skill set, the mindset, the tool sets to be able to not only lose weight over the next 12 weeks, but keep it off for a lifetime. If you find yourself struggling to shed pounds or you're regaining the weight after dieting, this academy is designed for you. Now, click on the show notes below so you can join our wait list, and you will be the first to know when our curriculum begins. Now, back to the show. Peace. I'm glad that you brought up how you look at weight loss and physical therapy, because I think that's what makes you special. And I think some of the best physical therapists, they holistically include all, right? It's not just like, hey, you should be doing all of this rehab, but to be honest, I think you should be doing some of this basic walking needs so we can start to lose weight, right? So I've seen offices where that's all they do, and then they're out, and I'm like, dude, that person needs to go walk.
Absolutely. Well, that's one of the reasons that for our business, for Kime, all of our locations are inside fitness centers. So inside wellness and fitness centers. And the reason for that is that, well, we wanted to help more people, honestly. And we wanted to help those that are certainly already trying to do the right thing, maybe we don't have all the tools. Right. So we're really interested in, in the athletic world, we call this performance, but we're really interested in ramping up people's performance where it's like, all right, you're doing the fitness, and I know you're hitting roadblocks,
Yeah.
but you're not willing to go to the medical system because the medical system sucks and it's broken, and you don't want your doctor to tell you to stop doing something for 6 weeks or whatever it is. So for us to be involved and work directly with the trainers and the coaches allows us to have so much more impact on the community and on people. I'm passionate about the fact that, like, if you can get you to move better and not hurt, then I think the coach can be that much more successful, and you as an individual be so much more successful because you can have fun with it. You can have confidence with it. You can feel like you can challenge yourself and raise the bar, achieve your goals.
I like that.
Yeah.
So you run your business very differently, unlike other physical therapists. Or some of them just run in offices,
Sure.
very medical-like,
Yep.
right? But you decided to run your business adjacent to a lot of functional type of training facilities.
Yep.
Why? Was there a thought behind that, or?
Well, from a business standpoint, there's a couple of reasons. So I think, like I said, it brings us to the people, and I think the people don't know what physical therapy can be, and I think that's our fault as therapists. I think as a community of physical therapists in this, worldwide, but certainly in the U.S.
Yeah.
As a whole, we've done a very poor job of being exercise advocates and movement advocates. Some have done an amazing job, but obviously the majority of the group is not really showcasing what we can do to help people at a high level.
Mm-hmm.
So most people don't understand what it is a therapist can do for them. So they're often thinking it's just that. It's thinking it's for grandma, thinking it's just my little shoulder exercises, which, nowadays, like, that's all replaced by Google and YouTube. I mean,
you can just YouTube that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'd speak to this all the time. If you're a therapist and you're just handing out an exercise sheet, like, you're behind. Like, first off, you can go to AI now and ask it a question, and it will give you a better protocol than most therapists will give you, or at least the same as most therapists out there. So as a skilled therapist moving forward, I think it's our responsibility to really see the whole body. We use a pyramid system. So there's three tiers of the pyramid. The bottom tier would be movement, or would be lifestyle. Like, are you able to eat well? Are you doing some basic aerobic movements?
Yeah.
Do you sleep appropriately?
Mm-hmm.
And then how are you managing stress? So those kind of 4 components of basic movement, nutrition, sleep, and then stress management, which could be a variety of different types of stresses. It could be physical, emotional, financial, it doesn't matter. All stress has an impact on the body, and it will cause it to adapt. So you have to be aware of what you're doing to yourself. So first, it's like, is that part of the pyramid clean, where from a foundational standpoint, we can move up? And I've learned that of those 4 things, if a person has one of those things out of line, like maybe they're sleeping well, they don't have a terrible amount of stress, and they move a little bit, but they eat like crap, like, they're going to be okay.
Right.
Like, they might have some stuff, they might have a little inflammatory problem, and they might get a little bit of pain here and there, but they'll be all right.
Yeah.
If they have 2 categories out of line, so now they're eating like crap, and now they've lost sleep. Now they're not sleeping 7 hours a night, and they're really kind of trying to they're demanding more out of their body without having the recovery aspect.
Mm-hmm.
That's when we see then start to break down. And I think that's where we get a lot of correlation to chronic pain and this dysfunction, where you're trying to get more out of the body, but it's not responding. It's not able to recover. So when you start to get 2 out of those 4 out of line, then people get into trouble. They start to fail.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to get those things in line, get at least 3 of the 4 going. If we get all 4 going, then we're like a really good foundation. We've got a really good platform to move forward. And then the second part of the pyramid is more detailed, like we call it, like controlled movement. Do you have control of your own body? Can you move it in the ways you want to move it? Do you have more dynamic control? Can you get away from the basics of just walking? Can you now do a lunge? Can you do a lunge and reach and rotate and touch the ground? Can you jump? Can you run? Those types of things. Those basic movement patterns. Can you do those things with efficiency and effectiveness? So that's where we really spend a lot of our time as clinicians. And we work really closely with coaches on that front with the fitness community. And then the top of the pyramid is what we call performance, which is like, now you've hit your peak performance, So what is it you're trying to get better at? Is it playing a sport? Is it just being recreationally active? Is it just being active with your kids? Doing activities with them, picking them up, maybe playing sports with them, whatever it might be. Can you do that in whatever your peak of performance is? So we use that type of a model as we approach people so that we're not doing just, hey, let's just focus in on a body part and on one section, because that's not the story. That's not the story of healing. And that's where medicine is is so limited right now is that the general medical community is everybody's a specialist and everybody's focused on just one thing.
Siloed a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a time and a place, like we need that. Like,
Yeah.
certainly a good amount of our population will evaluate them, we'll get them to a certain point, but it turns out, hey, like you do have a rotator cuff problem, or you do have a labral problem, or you did tear your meniscus. And as I can do everything I can to make that better, but at some point surgery is the right choice. And then let's get that done, because that's a critical step to then getting your activity level back, so we can fill that foundation and start getting you back where you're supposed to be. So,
yes.
But let's just not jump to it, or let's not make that the primary option.
I loved how you brought up those 4 pillars, because I'll get a lot of clients that want professional level results. They want a 6-pack, they want a nice booty, right? They want a 6-minute mile, they want to squat 2 times their body weight.
Yep.
And then we address some of those basic things, and they're very amateur level, right? They don't do any mobility. They have no level of stress management. They're not sleeping that well. They're kind of eating well, but they're not, right? And then we have this break in the system.
Yep.
And then they start to manifest injuries. They start to gain weight. And I was like, if you want professional level performance, you got to make sure you're professional at least 3 of these stuff.
Yes.
Right. So that's where some of the biggest mistakes, and why people are stuck.
Yes.
Why my athletes are stuck in that scale is because they're an amateur in one of those 4 categories.
Yeah, I'd agree. Or we see that as the big falling off point, right? You get after it. So I love the high goal. Hey, I want to run this a ton, like those goals, 2 times body weight. I want to run it in 6 miles, 6-minute mile, whatever it is. But then they'll get after it, for 6 to 8 weeks. But then something's going to break down. Who knows what it is? This is what's tough, is we can't anticipate exactly what the breakdown is going to be. But we can tell you something's going to go wrong.
Yeah.
You might end up with back pain. You might get sick. You might get the flu. You might end up with headaches. Like, who knows? It could be your body could respond in any way. All of those are signs of you. We could say you overdid it, but the reality of overdoing it means you didn't set a good foundation so that you could work at it with sustainability. So then you have this drop-off rate, which we see so often when people are trying to take up an exercise program, is they'll go great for maybe somewhere between 1 and 3 months, and then there's the fall. Like, I did it, I tried, and it didn't work. Or you got a little bit of a pain or something kind of started to hurt, and you're like, then you just lose momentum, and then you end up shifting. Or you're like, I need a new coach, or I need a new gym. You need another new stimuli.
Yeah.
And that's the worst thing that we can do. What we have to do is be diligent, get back, and focus on what is your limiting factor as a person. Look at those pillars, and I can assure you probably 1 or 2 of them is out of line, most likely 2 in that case. And at least start to nudge those in the right direction, and you'd be surprised what you can accomplish.
Wow. Okay. All right. Really quick rapid question on this.
Yeah.
You got 1 word to reply on one of these rapid questions.
Okay.
What is your perception on pain?
Mental.
What's your perception on injuries?
Poor mechanics.
Beautiful. All right. So I like how you address it in particular ways, because it's never just, I feel like when people observe injuries or pain, they think it's over. But then for a talented practitioner, they see something different.
Oh yeah.
So
I think for the most part, unless you're playing a competitive sport where there's contact or there's drama, I think that just about everything we face as injury is a result of lack of efficiency of movement. All right. So what we've learned in this field of, if you really go down movement science and, which has been a lot of it's been done in the physical therapy community and by some of the leaders in the industry. So it's good stuff. But we were thinking that there was an ideal way to move, like in the early 2000s. It was all about proper movement mechanics and, certain knee angles and back angles and all of this detail. And then 3D motion capture was everything, where we looked at people in every different angle and we were trying to make people move a certain way.
Yeah.
And we've moved away from that now.
Yeah.
That's no longer that's no longer ideal. That was 20 years ago. And we've learned that, people don't have to move perfectly. But what now is understood is that you have to move with some level of efficiency. And your body type matters, like how are you shaped? What's natural to you? Like your genetics are a factor. So we can't make everybody move the same. But you should know how to use your body and leverage it to the best of your ability. And there's the efficiency is more of the word. So the idea is, can you accomplish the certain movement task with efficiency, or is that task hard for you? So simple terms, like if you say squat down, get something off the ground.
Yeah.
Can you just pop down and do it? Or do you have to think about it a little bit? Do you need to widen your base before you take a step down? Do you have to like go slow back up? Or can you just do it with efficiency? So the idea is, can you move efficiently is it. So if you can do that, your body, to get a little more technical, is able to like store and transfer energy. So we call this kinetic linking. Can you kinetically have force flow through your body from the ground into some sort of implement, whether you're carrying something or moving your own body weight? Can you transfer force efficiently? And going back to the mobility problem, if people have a mobility deficit where something's stiff, that force comes up from the ground through the ankle, through the hip, through the thoracic spine. And if there's a mobility problem, the force can't transfer.
Right.
So then it gets stuck.
Locked, and then
so then you have this increased load on that spot. And then the bigger problem is you don't get the advantage of that kinetic momentum. So now if it's your shoulder, for example, now you have to recreate a ton more force at the shoulder because you weren't able to transfer it from the ground. So now you not only did that force get blocked, you're trying to recreate double the force in an isolated way, and that's not how the body moves. It's not good. It's not good at that. So if you look at how we do things as people, as humans, outside of the weight room, if you look at like normal lifestyle stuff, we always are using that concept of, can you kinetically flow force or energy through your body? And when you can't do that, then we see breakdowns. So when I say poor mechanics, that's what I'm referencing, is that you're not able to flow energy through the body smoothly. And there's not necessarily one ideal. There's, based on who you are, your body type, what your strengths and weaknesses are, it's a matter of, have you been able to figure out how to use your body efficiently?
Right.
Or have you not? And that's where we have to help.
Yeah. I look at pain as wisdom. Like your body's telling you something.
Right.
Like it already knows what to do.
Yeah.
And then I look at injuries as just like the richest data point that I have. And while I do get sad when people get injured, I also get excited because that's where they're willing to learn.
Oh, yeah. Good point.
Right? So it's like I always were like, hey, you should do these mobility things. And I suggest you should do it 3 or 4 times a week. And they don't. And eventually that injury manifests. That's when they're really ready.
Yeah.
Right? How do you balance that dynamic of a relationship when you know they're in the process to become injured?
Yeah.
Yet they neglect to utilize it.
It's good, and it's tricky. So I look at pain as a signaling system, like you just said there. So like it's a way that it communicates to your body that something's not right. Now, what exactly is wrong is tricky. So the system's not always clear. Back pain's a great example of this. That 83% of the population has back pain that will disable them at some point in their life. That's a huge number. But that doesn't mean that the back is your problem. Back pain if you look at any medication bottle, the back of the bottle says back pain is a side effect. It's a really big issue. For our body tends to put pain in the low back as a way to stop you from doing something. Yeah. But you have to determine where their signal's coming from and what it means. So it's a little tricky. But I think that what we have to consider is using pain as a signal, as a communication tool, appreciating that it's telling us something, and then we have to go in and figure out what that cause is.
Yeah.
But I'll also say this, that being pain-free is maybe not always the goal, or it may be a bad goal.
Right.
It's a good idea.
Yeah.
But it's not a reality. So like the best athletes in the world, people at top performers, they're not all pain-free. All the time by any means. And they push their body through pains and challenges. So you don't want to be listening to pain so much that you're scared to challenge your body and push it. There's many conditions where working through pain is the right thing. So we have to diagnose that and look at that and be like, all right, this is something you can push through versus this is something that you shouldn't push through. Yes. And that comes down to a diagnostic that we will evaluate, and then there's a lot of variables there to get into here, but we would determine, okay, this is something you should push through, and you need to, because you need to cause the right adaptation. Like the signaling mechanism of pain is wrong in this case, and you need to overcome it. Versus, hey, that signaling mechanism is, you need to listen to that, and we need to like modify your your exercise routine or move something at this point to get away from it. But I think the goal to try to be pain-free is rare. I was at a conference. This really surprised me. I realized I'm super fortunate that I don't have much pain. Like I wouldn't say that my body hurts anywhere, which I realized is quite rare in this moment.
Yeah.
We were in a room and there was 300 or 400 people at the conference, and a bunch of us were speakers. We had like a panel, and one of the speakers asked the room, raise your hand if you have pain, like right now sitting. And this was all fitness community. This was all active people, like people that know the body, right? There's 400 people in the room, and I think 395 raised their hand. And I was like, holy shit. I'm like, this is not good.
Right.
Like that was my first response. Like, this is not okay. That this many people have an idea of what to do and are struggling, and then they're coaching others on it. So again, now the level of pain they have may be appropriate to kind of work through and stuff. But that kind of scared me at the moment. It still sits with me. Like, wow, like that's a lot.
Yeah.
So the point is that being pain free is not. It's not normal.
It's not the ultimate goal.
Yeah,
either,
exactly. Like if that's your goal you're chasing, I think that's a tough one, and it may not be the right one.
You just need to be in a bubble.
Yeah, right. So we use a rule like if your pain level is 4 out of 10 or lower, you probably can work through that, and that's a safe place to operate from.
Yeah.
But if you're getting above a 4 out of 10, 5 out of 10 or greater, then you at least need to consult with somebody to kind of help you as, should I push through this, should I not? The likely answer is probably not if it gets to be that intensity.
Guys, you need to rewind that whole 10-minute spiel right there, because if you just get this guy's mindset in terms of what pain should be, you're going to break through some barriers. Because I honestly believe some of the best athletes, they're not pain-free. They're optimized for pain, and they're managing pain really, really well so they can handle more. It's really ironic that if you optimize your ability to handle stress and pain, you will become a better athlete. You will lose more weight. And that's really the name of the game. I think the problem a lot of times, it's the boring work that no one ever gets to see. And what we see on Instagram is the performance part.
Yes, the tip of the pyramid. Yes, indeed.
Yeah, and then what we don't see is the therapist that they have, the massage that's going on, how they have a sleep alarm to sleep, how much hydration they're taking in. They even have therapists for their mind. So I want to touch up on this next topic. Let's just say there's 4. We're creating a circle here.
Sure.
Okay. There could be more pillars for sure.
Okay.
There's the nutrition pillar. There's the fitness pillar. Okay. There's the stress management pillar, like the sleep.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I wanted to include mindset on there. Like in your professional expertise, someone that is going to be at the top of the top, that are successful in, even if they're gen pop or professional athlete, the top of the 70% and then the top of the 30%, what does their diagram look like?
Yeah, so I think from a mental approach, I would include that like kind of in the stress management. So like that was a great, like what's your relationship to stress?
Okay.
And how do you approach it? And appreciating where it's coming from. So it's the same. If we talk about performance, it could be physical performance. It could be like work performance, like, in the boardroom or at your particular job, whatever that might be.
Yeah.
You understand that you have to understand stress, and you might have emotional stress placed on you, or maybe you have anxiety about giving a certain presentation or accomplishing a certain project for work or whatever it might be. And you have to understand that has weight on you. And that weight's very, very real. Like that weight is, it's real on your brain. It's real on your body. It's going to have an impact. And if you don't appreciate that and just ignore it, which you can do in your 20s, but I think as you get older, that becomes harder for your body to tolerate, especially if it's in a chronic state. This is, we know there's more and more evidence about this. So that's just one form of stress. So you have to understand it, know where it's coming from, know what causes it, and have strategies to like, hey, I thrive in this environment.
Yeah.
Or I need to manage it in some way,
Right.
But if you just like act like you're a victim and you're like, oh, I mean, here I am and I'm stressed out and we're not gonna get there. So you have to acknowledge and then, but appreciate the different forms. You could have relationship stress, with your partner. You could have friends and family. You could have relationship stress with. You could have financial stresses and you could have physical stresses. So I think all of those create your mentality.
Okay.
Of how you approach, how you approach life and performance, and I think we see this. Like if we look at this at the top end, I mean, everybody knows Tiger Woods, and I don't know Tiger, so I'm not speaking from a personal relationship here by any means. But
Yeah.
I think if you look at Tiger, we could say that he was like physically the top performer maybe ever in his sport. You know, he's one of the pinnacle. Like there's a few people that have like changed the industry, changed the sport. You know, like you can look at Tom Brady and Michael Jordan, and Tiger Woods in that conversation. And then since he lost his dad and went through a change mentally, I assume it was pretty clear his performance really, really started to suffer.
Right.
And then you saw this difficulty for him to sustain that top level that he was once at.
Mm-hmm.
Then he started having all kinds of physical injuries and had other relationship stress that mounted. So you can, unfortunately for him, we all got to watch that happen.
Yeah.
In the public eye, but the reality is all of us have that to some degree, and you have to understand what's happening to you. And then I think approach it. But an athlete that this is one of the biggest challenges in athletics. You see a lot of there's always talk about athletes with depression, and we saw that in the last Olympics. I think Simone Biles is pretty open about that, which mindset wise is tough. Like for them, a lot of what they're experiencing is the amount of pressure.
Right.
For them, for so long it was, I want to do this for myself. I want to improve for myself. And then at some point you get to a point where you're performing for other people, which is a totally different mindset, And for example, the girl we were talking about, the Olympic gold medal, the throwing girl, what we came up with, she worked a lot with sports psychologists throughout her entire career, and that was a really big part of it for her. But after she won the Olympic gold, she was the underdog going in by a long shot, especially as an American, and even though she was number one in the world, that was her first time being there, and it was still kind of like, if you looked at that from a world community in the throwing world, they'd be like, yeah, that's just because the European girls haven't decided to compete yet. They're just warming up. Yeah. Right. Because that's where it fell into the time of the year where they don't really start throwing until towards the end, but whatever. So we go to the Olympics. She wins the damn thing, and then is now on top of the world, number one, and a gold medalist. And so now everyone's chasing her, whereas before she was chasing everybody else. And that mindset for her, she's like,
different. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really interesting. So part of our success was that we spent, at least 12 months, if not 18 months, preparing for the Olympics.
Yeah.
Without very, very much distraction. And then when we won the Olympic gold, the distractions were at an all-time high. So she was on Oprah. She went to every late-night talk show you could think of. She's like this immediate celebrity for a 6-month run. And it's kind of like, hey, enjoy this, rock and roll with it. But at the same time, I was like, hey, Steph, if we don't start training now, you're not going to enjoy the World Championships this year. And she's like, I know, but this is probably not going to happen again. And I'm like, yeah, I get it. Run the table, have some fun with it. So basically from August to December, she did not train with any consistency, very up and down because of her schedule and travel and social schedule and everything, which is great for her. And I think she looked back probably as one of the most fun times of her life. Yeah. But she really didn't perform great that next year in 2009. But she was still being chased all the way to the next Olympics in London, which we did well, but we weren't, we didn't win. We were finished 5th or 6th. And then, and then it went to Rio where she was like the American leader and expected to go. And for her, she goes, it was really hard to be on top and to stay on top was very, very different mentally for her. Yeah. She's like, I'd much rather be the underdog. Like she really wanted to go out and underperform prior to big meets so that her ranking would go down and people would expect less. Mentality wise. So I think it's interesting that we have natural personalities and strategies to manage stress and how we perform, and there's that book, right? What got you here won't get you there, right? And you've got to you have to change as you hit these different times. So it's different milestones. Yeah, it's difficult. But it's a big deal, a huge deal.
Yeah, when I first started my fitness journey, I always put fitness as the top of the base of my pyramid was fitness. Yeah. And then second was nutrition. And then mindset never even existed in that pyramid, right? Yeah. Now it's really shifted, right? So it's shifted. Now I feel like mindset is the base for me. And then you have your nutrition, and then fitness is last. Right. And I think you can build the pyramid both ways, but one, if you build your pyramid through fitness, nutrition, and then mindset, I think that's where people fall apart the hardest. Yeah. right? Because they built their performance, and that's just like, that's them. And then it just topples, and then you have a lot of these massive problems. So now going into when I have a new client come in, I have to address where their mindset is, how they're
100%.
managing their stress.
Yeah.
Like, what is your stress? Are you a CEO of a multi-million-dollar company, or are you like a bartender, right? I got to know what levels of stress we're dealing with. That way we can at least optimize for that. And then we can start to build your fitness. Then we can start building your nutrition, so on and so forth. And I just find more sustainability and way more rapid progress when I address it that way.
I love that. I think you really have to. I think people are different. You know, everybody's different in this space. And, you know, like in working with like the SEAL teams and the Special Forces guys, this was really enlightening for me. When we first started working with them, we'd have essentially a team of like maybe 8 to 12 guys come for like a 2-week period, and they would train with us. And I'd get the first glance at evaluating these guys. And my evaluation was mostly physical. You know, what can you do? How do you move? You know, do you have any injuries, problems, et cetera? So my expectation in meeting them was that these are going to be elite athletes. Yeah. These are going to be like Spartan warriors, you know, like, you know, just
different
can do
mindsets.
anything. Yeah. Jumping over walls, you know, like, you know, sprinting, like carrying 60 pounds on their back, just beasts, right? Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't say that that's not true. There certainly are some that are like that, but the majority of the group is not necessarily what you would consider to be like, you wouldn't look at them and be like, oh, there's a
David Goggins all day, right?
Not David Goggins. Yeah, they're not your Division I athletes necessarily. They're like amazingly cut and ripped and like can do amazing feats. They don't have 42-inch verticals. That's not who they are. But mentally, all of them shared the same concept mentally, which is what are we doing? And once you tell me the task, I will achieve it regardless of the cost. Wow. So if it's, hey, we're going to run through the wall today, they're like, okay, that kind of sucks. But if that's what we're doing,
let's do it.
Let's do it. No problem.
Yeah.
And then if you think more about, people talk about like buds for the SEAL team, they refer to it as like a training program. Yeah. It's not a training program. It's a filtration process.
Right.
The people who make it through buds just never gave up.
Yeah.
So they're looking for the mindset. Is the mindset that you will not quit no matter the cost. And once you have that,
we can build the skills on top.
Yeah. Now we can build physical conditioning, and now we can build, you know, you have to have some basic skills of that, and of being able to shoot, and being able to, you know, certain mental capabilities.
Yeah.
But they're looking for, can you function in fatigue states, and are you willing to never give up? And so that's, you know, that's a certain elite type of performer in that field. They're really obsessive about that. But you have to think of like who's in front of you. Like we have another guy who's an elite NFL wide receiver, you know, famous, you know, paid very, very well. And he's not a guy that can go out and compete for you 7 days a week. His nervous system is just not wired for that.
Right.
He's very, very explosive. He's very, very shifty. Mm-hmm. After he has a game, his nervous system is so challenged and so highly demanded during the game that he's useless for at least 48 hours.
Wow.
Useless.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, just lie in bed, you know. And in working with him, we might do some treatments where we challenge his body in certain ways, and we would do like dry needling and different techniques. And dry needling was an example where for his body that really caused this fatigue result where for the next 24 to 48 hours, he's just like burnt.
Yeah.
And, you know, luckily he plays in the NFL for him because that means he can play on Sunday and not have a game again until the next Sunday. Mm-hmm. But if he played in the NBA or played in the MLB where he was playing 3 or 4 days a week, I don't think he'd be in the league anymore, even though he's special. Mm-hmm. But his stress management, the way his body tolerates stress, is not conducive to training or loading, you know, 5, 6, 7 days a week. You know, he's much better. Like, I'll give you 2 or 3 days hard as hell, and then I need a couple days of recovery in between, because that's just how his nervous system's wired.
Right.
So we have to appreciate that in people, that I think they're different.
Everyone's different. Yeah.
Everyone's different, and they have certain things that are natural to them. They can develop skills in other categories, but there's always like a natural thing. I think you have to learn to understand that about yourself, and then when you think about training or, you know, performance improvement, you need to take it like, hey, I'm best if I'm doing this,
right?
And I'm really bad if I do this. Like that's good to know, and then you know where your spectrum is,
right?
And then you can go from there. You know?
Yeah. I used to try to like get everybody to turn into SEALs,
right?
Which is
right
a recipe for disaster, by the way. And the more I started to train athletes, I started to, and I'm a big sports fan, right? There's going to be, I look at everyone in that sports field, and there's people that are not going to run. Maybe they're a goalie, right? And there's someone that's a midfielder that goes up and back. And then there's ones that are very like, they're all doing their job. And knowing that every single athlete that I take in, I got to consider what position they are going to be at the best place and how to coach them.
That's it.
And where they're going to thrive. Like a goalie's not going to thrive when they're running midfield all day.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean? So
totally.
Just addressing those personalities, I think, is critical. And knowing that who you are yourself is an indication of how you should train yourself sometimes.
Oh my God, 100%. I think that's massive. I think we have this misconception that if you're a high performer, you can be a high performer at everything. And that's not really, I wouldn't say that's true. I think that you can high perform at certain things, but to do everything really well is a misconception. And we might get that from maybe high school sports. At that level of competition, you might have been a multi-sport athlete or been very good at every position on the football team. But as the skill set rises, as you move to Division I, you move to the professional, we really truly see the high performers. When you go out into like a football locker room in the NFL, or if we're at the Olympics looking at track and field, I could look at the body of the person in front of me and tell you what position they play or what event they do. Just because their body is so focused on that particular aspect of performance.
Optimized,
Yeah, for that event. Like if they're a long jumper or if they're a sprinter, if they're a distance runner or if they're in pole vault, like these people look very, very different. Just like in football, the running back looks different than the wide receiver, looks different than the DB, looks different than the lineman.
Yeah.
And so as we get to higher and higher levels of performance, we have to understand that there is specialization for a reason.
Right.
And it'd be a misconception to think that you can do everything well.
Yeah.
So your body might be really good at doing running, or maybe really good at lifting weights.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you need to respect that, hey, this is what I'm best at. This is going to be a better vehicle for me to achieve weight loss, achieve fitness, achieve my goals.
Achieve success.
Right, whatever that is for you. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. And when we get a general population, we take them through everything, long workouts, short workouts, heavy workouts, gymnastics-based workouts. I think it's important to try to do all of those things. And you're going to find that you're going to excel in one or two of those things.
Yep.
And oftentimes when you excel in one or two of those things, you feel great about it. And I think it's important that's where you steer your performance. If you're like, you're doing the running workouts, but you're just dying. I don't know if 5K should be your next performance metric.
Exactly.
Right? Maybe it should be learning how to get 2 times back squat body weight, because they both will create progress in terms of weight loss, or body fat loss in that case, if it's strength, right?
Yep.
So eventually if you're hitting this plateau, identify out of those exercises which you thrive, create a performance metric for that, attach that as part of your metrics you measure, and then you'll begin to see some progress again.
Absolutely. I think it's huge for your mindset, right? That you're like, hey, I'm good at this, so I like it, right? That's very natural for the human. Right. It's like, I'm good at this, I like doing it, let's make that a goal. And then you can really challenge yourself there. You'll probably have less injuries and much more success.
Yeah.
And then maybe something you're not so good at, to your point, you don't necessarily don't have a goal at all, but maybe your goal is much more subdued. Maybe it's not reaching for the stars. It's like, hey, I just want to get a little bit better there, but
my specialty's here.
Yeah, my specialty's here. Yeah, so you can make yourself more well-rounded, but you're probably, if you do that, you're going to compromise some of your success.
Yeah. I found out that I'm an endurance athlete just over the past 2 years.
Oh, right.
And I did the Olympic lifting for 16 weeks. I did a whole year program. I think I got a 10-pound PR.
Right. Okay.
I knew I wasn't a strength athlete because when we both tested, there was 3 other competitors with me, and they had 40 or 60-pound PRs.
Yeah,
and I'm like, how did you? I only got a 10-pound PR out of this program. You did a 60? And it was just so defeating. I put in all of this work, the same amount of work they did, maybe even more some days.
100%.
And I only increased by that much. Yep. And then only when I started doing some of the endurance stuff like Murph and burpees for hours, right? I was like, I'm not stopping.
Yeah.
Everyone else is kind of stopping here. And also I kind of enjoy it.
Yeah.
Right. And I was like, am I an endurance athlete? I used to hate running. So there's certain times where you have to try things that you think you hate, but you actually might be good at it.
Yep.
As I look back, I hated running because my coaches used that as a punishment.
Right. 100%.
Which actually now I look at it as like, this is the best part of my day. Like the long distance stuff is the best part of my day. So when people are finding that, sometimes it's good to try things that you think you hate.
That's 100%. I think that's 100% the journey. I love that you shared that. That's because that's it. Yeah, you could set the wrong goal, and then really frustrate yourself.
Yeah.
With the fact that maybe you didn't achieve that goal, but maybe it's not how your body is designed to operate. You know? It's amazing what I've learned from working with. I've learned so much working with elite athletes because their bodies are so sensitive that's helped me take that and apply it to understanding how humans in general move, or the general population moves. That we just don't challenge ourselves enough to be that detailed. But with an elite athlete, you can really see it. And you can really see how fast they change when you give them the right stimulus,
Yeah.
But I've been shocked many times where, I used to think that, hey, the weight room created great athletes, but I know that for sure is not the case anymore. The weight room can facilitate performance. It can also decrease performance. You have to be very careful there. But I had this kid who was one of my first pro guys. He played for the Chargers, and he was a running back, and he blew his knee out. So we were rehabbing him from that. And literally, he's with the Chargers organization. He was their third back behind LaDainian Tomlinson and Darren Sproles, which are outstanding running backs in their careers. Blew his knee out, had surgery. Actually, had 2 surgeries because he had to have multiple ligament repairs. I got him about 9 months out, and he was still extremely weak.
Yeah.
So when I got him, I'm like, well, we got to get you stronger for you to get back to the league. We got to do some work here. And he's like, yeah, well, whatever you say, I'll do. I was like, well, when's the last time you squatted?
Yeah.
And he's like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, put a bar on your back and back squatted. And he's like, dude, I've never done it. And I'm like, bro, you're in the NFL. Like, what are you talking about? Like you played Division I football. You played high school football.
That's crazy.
You're in the NFL. When's the last time you back squatted? Like, stop bullshitting me.
Yeah.
He's like, bro, I've never done it. I'm like, what'd you do in college?
Yeah.
Like, how'd you get through this in college? His thighs are like twice mine.
Some people are just built
huge.
that way. Yeah.
Yeah. He's like, dude, whenever we lifted in college, because I got out of there. He goes, I'm getting out of the weight room. I don't want to be a part of that. And I'm like, okay, because I'm sure you were their best player, right? You made it to the NFL. You were probably the best player. You probably set school records, So, anyways, I was like, well, we have to squat you because I have to get your legs stronger. It's like half the size of your other one, and it's still bigger than mine. But we need to get it back to that level to get to the league. So he's like, sure, I'll do it. Whatever you want me to do. So we loaded it up. He's like 5'9", like 235, probably like a bowling ball.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, let's just put the bar at 135. You've never done it before, and you're coming off a bad knee injury, so it's pretty weak on that side. So, and he did 10 reps, and he looks at me like, okay, am I doing it right? Like, I'm bored, like, okay, that's fine. So let's put it at 185. We jacked it to 185, and he squats it again, 10 reps, bored.
No problem.
Yeah, he's like, just looking around. He's like, is this how it's supposed to be? I'm like, you're an ass.
Yeah.
And then, so I'm like, all right, let's go to 225. So this is one day, like just one set at 135, one set at 185, one set at 225. We almost doubled the weight. And he reps it out for 10, and he's like, yeah, this is easy.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm not comfortable doing any more today because this is not normal, right? This is, like I said, like one of my first pro guys.
Yeah.
So, but over the next 2 weeks, I just listened to his body and progressed as we were able to. We were doing 450 pounds 2 weeks later. He'd never squatted before, and he's got a bad leg.
Yeah.
And it's just like, this isn't normal. Like,
yeah.
Like my body wouldn't do this.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense to me because I couldn't do what you're doing. But as in working more and more with those types of guys, you can see the adaptation, that the rate at which their muscle tissue adapts is just off the charts. And to like your point, you did strength training for a year and gained 10 pounds. If this guy had done strength training for 4 weeks, he would have like gained 50 pounds just because he just does it, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's important to know who you are and what your body does, like how it responds. Like that's important, and a lot of that's innate.
Yeah. Did he end up eventually liking to squat, or he was like,
I wouldn't say like it. The football guys never actually like lifting. It's very rare. But he did it.
Yeah.
He made it part of his process and part of his program. But as soon as we were able to actually run and cut, so one of the interesting things I learned from him was, how do you get your legs stronger if you're not like lifting weights like this?
Yeah.
And he's like, bro, he goes, when I put the cleats on and go on the field, he goes, I'm 120%. Like I'm all in.
Oh.
So the depth that he gets into when he's sprinting and then cuts and changes direction or doing deceleration work is incredible.
Yeah.
And that's really how he
His
developed
legs.
his leg strength.
Wow.
Is that he works so hard in that environment that he just developed. And of course, I mean, he's a genetic freak, right? There's a genetic freak. So, but anyways, that was really, really enlightening for me. And he did squat, but once again, that wasn't really how he developed greatness. How he developed high performance was through working on the skill set that he needed for that event, which was put the cleats on and get on the grass and go do the movements. And yeah, he returned back to the league and played a bit longer, but it was a road for him for sure.
Wow. Okay, we can keep talking, but I want to ask this final question, and I want it to relate towards performance helping weight loss. Okay, and I want to give the audience a few metrics that they can build up to. They're like, okay, my scale is not moving. What numbers should I start focusing on? If you can give some recommendation on maybe one weightlifting metric that they can chase for, one metabolic metric they can chase for, and then one gymnastics metric they can chase for that would potentially get them to start losing weight. Ooh. What would some of those metrics be?
That's a great one. So in my profession, I'm always looking for the limiting factor. So if someone's like hit a plateau or they've hit a spot where a speed bump, if you will, and they're not making progress any further, I'm always looking for the limiting factor.
Right.
So I would typically not do this, but I'll definitely do it for the sake of to give some good guidance, and we can talk through that. But I'm looking for the limiting factor, and maybe it's a mobility problem. It's usually this. It's either a mobility problem, it's some sort of control, like strength control. We would call this core. Everybody talks about is your core strong? Yeah. That really means like, can you control your own body in space? Yeah. And then, what's your strength and then what's your power? So it's kind of those four things, and where's the deficit? So a lot of limiting factors will fall in one of those four categories, or it's more, like I said, foundation of the pyramid. Like, are you not recovering because you're not sleeping, not eating properly, et cetera? Yeah. So you have to eliminate those. I would promise you the problem is in those areas. But if we want to set some goals, a metabolic goal that we strive for is there's a couple, but I'll say both of them are around heart rate. So having a resting heart rate that's into the 50s is a good place to be, depending on how fit you are. That's an excellent number to be in the 50s. There are some genetic components there, but for the most part, if you can say your resting heart rate's in the 50s, you're probably in a pretty good spot. Yeah. If you're in the distance community and you're like a run and you're not really you're probably not talking about weight loss, but you're in performance. I mean, your resting heart rate would be in the 40s or in like 38, 39, which is insane for people, but that's a reality. But if your resting heart rate's in the 70s or in the upper 60s, I'd have some concerns about your body's ability to tolerate stress because it's already under stress. Wow. Yeah. So if your heart rate is around 70 or above, which I think the medical community often says is ideal or normal, I would argue that you're already under stress. And if someone put more stress on you, your performance is going to suffer. Yeah. You're either going to get hurt or you're going to get sick or your body will fail. So we want to see this resting heart rate drop over time. So whatever you're at, if you're in the 70s or the upper 60s, you want to be able to get that to drop by maybe a couple of beats at rest, so can you drop it 4 or 5 beats? Are you speaking a specific age range, like someone that's like in between 60 to... True, yeah. So I think if you're over 60, you probably have a little more room for air here, and it could be a little bit higher, it probably will be. And if you're really, really young, it'll be kids have much higher as well. But if you're in the age group like 25 to 60... Should be under the 70 mark. You should be under the 70 mark. Okay. And if you can get your number to drop like a couple of beats on whatever you have, if you're already in the 50s, it's not going to drop very far. But if you're closer to 70, try to get the drop by 3 to 5 beats, maybe at rest, or, if you're using an app like Whoop, or, I've got a sleep number bed, and I really didn't know this was a feature, but it tells me my sleep heart rate and such. So what is it? What's yours? 52. Dude, you want to know what mine is? It's 38. Yeah. You're an endurance athlete. Yeah. You're right. It freaks me out. 38's low. When I did my crown, they were like, dude, are you what's wrong with your heart? It's really slow. And I was like, what is it? And she was like, it's 38. And I was like, oh, it's probably normal. So the medical community freaks out when you're in the 30s. You're like, dude, you're dead. You're like dying. Like, what's going on? Yeah. And you'll see big blood pressure fluctuations in that group as well, because basically your heart's super efficient. So you can have one pump and the blood circulates really well. Yeah, across the body. Yeah, across the body. Whereas somebody else is in the 70s is doing 2 pumps for every pump that you're making, right? Yeah. So that's an inefficient system. So by having a lower heart rate I think we can see some efficiency there.
Okay.
Now, there's some compromise that a super low heart rate can have some other risks, but nonetheless, if you're in the 50s, you're probably in a good thing. It's not necessarily bad to be in the 30s or 40s, but you have to be concerned about like enlarged heart, some of those things long term. But anyway, so that's one number. Another metabolic number that I like is heart rate drop after like max effort.
How fast it goes down.
How fast it goes down. So we like to use like a sled, or if you're doing some sort of a kettlebell swing or a complex movement where you're doing a series of a squat and then you do burpees or pull-ups and burpees and you're getting to max heart rate.
Yes.
And you sustain that for, whatever, 3 minutes, 4 or 5 minutes of work where you're kind of max fatigue.
Yeah.
What was your peak heart rate? What was your max during that time? And then how fast can you get it to drop?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of evidence that around dropping 40 beats in 2 minutes is a good measure of fitness.
Wow. Okay.
So if you can't drop 40 beats in 2 minutes, then once again, that's a suggestion that your body's tolerance to stress is not as good as it could be, right? So doesn't mean you're like super high risk or like throw you off the chart, but that could be better.
Yeah.
So if you're in a better shape, better condition, that'd be a good metabolic number to shoot for. And that comes down to basically doing HIIT type workouts, right? Where you
interval.
Interval stuff where you take the intensity up and drop it off. And then that's how you would train and develop that skill set.
Yeah.
So I think that's metabolic. Gymnastics wise. So I think this is great. So my first thoughts are for people to be better at hanging. So to hang from a bar, whether you could just hang there, like if you're in fitness is not your thing, or from a weight standpoint, like doing pull-ups and muscle-ups are pretty advanced skills. But if you can simply hang from the bar for a time period, like a minute.
Yeah.
So we do a lot of testing at our level. So if I was to sum up my career and like what we focus on, can I have someone work for time under tension with good control? As a therapist, that's really my job.
Yeah.
It's the coach and fitness and performance coach's job to push them to do explosive movements and high-speed movements, which we can do, but that's really not where I shine. Like I usually find myself in a team where we have an athlete, a performance coach, a physical therapist, nutritionist, mental coach. My job is usually to maximize the potential of the body, which means work on control, work on mobility. Can they do the foundational things? And then someone else is going to push them high, and their skill coach is going to demand them to do a lot. And I'm trying to make sure that they can do both those things without breaking. So I'm always building a foundation. So what we've learned is that two things happen if you can do things for like 1 minute plus. So if you can have tissue and time under tension for a minute plus, you're going to get an aerobic adjustment. So your mitochondria and your cells are going to be more efficient at using oxygen. Right. You mentioned oxygen as a weight loss strategy, so this applies to that. So mitochondria is what takes oxygen and then turns it into ADP or ATP so that that's your energy system. Yeah. Your ability to burn oxygen and turn it into energy is extremely important. So that happens locally at the cellular level, and it happens whole body aerobically. Yeah. So if you can condition tissue to like hang for a minute, to hold like a one-arm plank or like a one-arm push-up position for a minute.
It's a good test, okay.
Yeah, if you can do a split squat where you drop into like a lunge position or a split squat position with your knee like 1 inch off the ground, can you hold that for a minute?
Ouch, yeah.
Those would be things that I'd be looking for is, okay, can you control your body for prolonged periods of time just at body weight? Which are all challenging.
Yeah.
And if you can do all those things for a minute, then I think you can do other gymnastics events, and I'd feel safe about your ability to move your own body. So then, doing muscle ups or doing more, monkey bar type movements or things of that nature become great. Handstands, things of that nature become great. We use that a lot in rehab, actually, the handstand, a lot of times my progression will take somebody to like a wall stand. And then of course, depending on their skill set and what they want to do, we might take it to the full distance, but I usually don't find myself coaching that. That's at that point, I'm handing them off to you. Right. To be like, Royce, take them, you got it, bro. But those would be, I guess, my foundations on gymnastics.
Listen, if you're trying to lose weight, but you're just frustrated because you just can't seem to see any results, we would love to help you out. Now, we've been helping thousands of our athletes over the course of a decade by crafting personalized programs that are not only sustainable, but also effective. Now, if you're ready to transform your health, click on the show notes below, book a call with one of our coaches. We'd love to help you out. Now back to the show. Peace. My gosh, I'm writing mental notes down because now I'm going to add this to some of my training clients. But there are some athletes like, I want to be able to do 21 pull-ups like you in a row, right?
Sure.
And I'm like, okay, how long does 21 pull-ups take? Oh, it's approximately 30 to 40 seconds, And I'm like,
Right.
okay, let's hop on that bar, see if you can hold it for 30 or 40.
Yeah.
And I never once thought that could be a metric. I just wanted to test that just to be like, dude, you got to strengthen. You either got to lose a little bit more weight so you can hang on there longer, or your grip needs to be insane that you can just sit there for 30 seconds, because you're not only sitting there for 30 seconds, you're pulling yourself up and down for 30 seconds.
Yep.
So I love how you created that, because those are some really easy benchmarks for people to measure that is low risk, relatively low risk. And you can see a lot of metabolic changes pretty quickly that I think you could almost test it every single week.
You could, absolutely. It's great. It's self-limiting, so it's super safe, which is limited by your own body weight, and it's limited by time. Yeah. So you might struggle at 45 seconds, then 50, then you're absolutely right. You can test it all the time, and it's totally safe. The reason why 1 minute was used was because that's when we see that chemistry change, where the mitochondria become more active at the 60-second mark. Yeah. So you can extend it beyond that, but that's kind of a threshold point in science. There was a big study done in China, thousands of people, and you'd mentioned grip strength, so this is important. Big study that done, thousands of people, which is always the best kind of studies, large volumes of people, and they looked at grip strength, and they tied grip strength to longevity. Yeah. Life longevity. So how long do you live, regardless of other things? But they found high correlations with the stronger the grip, the longer the life. Wow. So and you know what? I can attest to that. I shook my wife's grandpa, and he was like a Midwest. Oh yeah. And dude, he covered. When it's too late, when they shake your hand and you're like, oh, dude, I didn't commit, so it's crushed, right? But he's like 95 years old, and he looks like he's 70. Okay. Right. So there's that aspect that I truly believe that grip is like that. Yeah. The other side to this is I noticed athletes that have a stronger like farmer's grip typically have less shoulder issues. Yep. High correlations. Yeah, which is just like, dude, we need to strengthen your grip. I think it's an strengthened exercise that people can use. Yeah. We do a lot of carries. I think this is where the hang is great. We do a lot of carries with kettlebells, like farmer's carries, racked carries, bottoms up, overhead carries, etc., to develop that grip strength, because it is really, really tied. To get a little more detailed, it's really tied to rotator cuff strength, which we see, if you have better rotator cuff, you usually have less shoulder problems. Okay. So, all right, we just need one more metric. We gave a bunch for the metabolic. Yep. We gave a bunch for the gymnastics. Assuming they're moving well mechanicked. Okay, nothing's wrong. What's a weightlifting strength metric for you? Yeah. Good. So we use. It depends on who we're talking about here. Is a big one. So I think that the squatting twice body weight is a big number. I think that's more elite for sure. Yeah, I usually don't set that. We might be at 1.5 times maybe for like the average person is a good goal. So I mean, I'm totally comfortable with that. I'm hesitant to make heavy weightlifting a general goal, right? Because it comes down to the person. There's some people just aren't engineered for it, and if you haven't trained like the skill set, there's a skill acquisition component to weightlifting, 100%. And if you haven't trained that, then just stepping up and doing it. Outside of my story about the NFL guy, is usually takes some time to develop the skill. So I'd be hesitant there, but I think I like that 1.5 times body weight on a squat's good. On a deadlift, an elite number for like a D1 athlete is more of a 3x body weight type of a number, which is unreal. Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot for like a Division I athlete, but that's a number we'll use in sports. But a deadlift of 2 times the body weight is a very respectable place to be. Very good place to be, but that's picking the weight up from the ground. And again, if you don't have, you mentioned assuming they have all great mobility, which would be a huge checkbox. Especially if we're talking about somebody who's 45, 50 years old, the odds that you have great mobility at that age are very low because you've had trauma in your life. You've done something, or you haven't done things. Either way, you're going to have some stiffness issues most likely because you've had some years on your body. So deadlifting a lot may not be great until you clear those things. And then once you do, then by all means, go for it, because that's the natural skill, lift things off the ground. So I think those would be like 2 times body weight on deadlift, 1.5 on squat would be a good number. Like a press. So we'll use, I'm a bigger fan of like a shoulder overhead press versus like a bench press type of strategy.
Yeah.
So this is a long conversation, but let's just say that we prefer at Kime and through our approach, a single arm press of a kettlebell or a dumbbell would be a measurement that I'd find valuable, and something we use as part of our certification process. We take coaches through on our kettlebell stuff. Okay. So in that process, it's more of a half body weight type of a number. So a third to a half body weight, depending if you're female versus male. So, if you weigh 180 pounds, then you're looking at being able to press, 60 to 90 pounds overhead one time. That's kind of a max. But the reason why a single arm press is valuable is that it's a total body motion. You do it standing. This is not a seated position. So you do it standing. You use your legs. You're going to jerk it up, but you can be like a little bent, everything engaged, and you have to be able to control everything else to generate that type of force overhead with one arm. And doing it with one arm is actually much more practical in the real world than doing it with two arms.
Yeah, we rarely move with two arms.
Exactly. Yeah. That's exactly right, Royce. You rarely move with two arms overhead in the real world. You're much more likely, if you're going to reach for something, is a one-arm thing. And you'll find yourself doing that in real life stuff. So
yeah, I love that. Okay, so I just want to summarize this really, really quickly.
All right.
And then we can ask how we can find you. I know we're building some locations. We're trying to create this partnership here because you're in everywhere. You have multiple locations. Now we're trying to get into Vegas. But for the most part, guys, if you're struggling to lose the next weight, you've been in this journey for a decent amount and just not fluctuating, perhaps I want you to consider that maybe moving to optimize your performance is the next level. Now, there are going to be some issues, underlying issues that maybe some of those basic needs need to be met. Your mindset, your nutrition, your flexibility, your rehab, all of those things. But once you optimize for that, it's important to start measuring maybe particular metrics. Some really low, easy hanging fruit ones is hanging on a bar for gymnastics or holding a semi squat lunge, right? As another metric.
A split squat.
Yeah, a split squat. Yeah. And then another one is finding out what your resting heart rate should be, 70 below, or is it dropping 40 beats per minute after
2 minutes.
Yeah.
40 beats in 2 minutes.
100%. And then the final one, if you're moving really, really well, start maximizing your potential to be able to do 1.5 your body weight on a back squat or 2 times body weight on a deadlift. So make sure you write those down because it's going to get you to the next level for sure if you start chasing some of those numbers. But Tony, where can we find you? And we might be working together really soon here. So
yeah,
but
we're looking forward to that a ton, Royce. I think this has been great. So we have clinics in the Sacramento region is where we've been based. So we started there almost 10 years ago now. They're our 9th year. Now we have 7 locations there. We have a location in Reno, and then working on coming to Vegas here, which is with you, which would be super exciting. So we're planning on getting that rolling here in the next month.
Those are the big Scottsdale too.
Nothing in Phoenix. I lived in Phoenix for a while. Worked at Exos, Athletes Performance, for a while. But yeah, so that's where we're at. You can reach us online, so kimeperformance.com, and our Instagram is at kimeperformancept. So you can engage with us there, send us a message. We can help you.
Yeah.
We do a decent amount of virtual stuff as well. So if you're somewhere else where you have a question about your impact, or like you have hit that threshold where you're plateaued and you want some help there, reach out to us and we can set up a virtual call.
Yeah. Guys, I'll link all of the stuff that he talked about on the show notes. Again, if you guys like this episode, or if you have a question that is physical therapy oriented that you want to ask him directly, I'll share him the question. I'll answer it right on there. And as always, guys, peace out.